Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be diving into some pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
We're talking about the nature of reality and, knowledge and the idea that maybe, just maybe someone or something is shaping our world.
Yeah.
So our source material for this deep dive is a fascinating blog post
Okay.
written by a former Goldman Sachs alum who's clearly been giving these big questions
Yeah.
some serious thought.
Oh, absolutely. And it gets pretty mind-bending
Yeah.
pretty quickly. The post starts by tackling a classic philosophical problem.
Okay.
How can we ever be sure that the world we experience is actually real?
Right. It's like, how do we know we're not all just brains in vats
Exactly.
hooked up to some giant computer simulation,
Yeah,
or dreaming an incredibly vivid dream?
exactly. We rely on our senses to tell us what's real.
Right.
But what if our senses are being tricked? There's no way to step outside our own perceptions to double chime.
So we're stuck with this fundamental uncertainty about the external world.
Yeah, that's the point the blog post drives home.
Okay.
It argues that we can't assign a probability to the external world actually existing.
Right.
We simply can't know, for sure.
Okay, so external reality is a big question mark,
Yeah.
but the post doesn't stop there, does it?
No, it doesn't.
It goes on to explore these two really intriguing concepts:
Uh-huh.
fine-tuning of the universe and synchronicities.
Yes, and those are where things start to get really interesting.
Okay,
Let's start with fine-tuning.
okay,
This refers to the observation that the fundamental constants of the universe,
right.
things like the strength of gravity, the speed of light,
Hmm.
and the masses of elementary particles,
Yeah,
seem incredibly finely tuned for life to exist.
yeah, it's mind-boggling when you think about it.
It is.
If any of these constants were even slightly different,
Right,
stars wouldn't form, planets wouldn't exist,
right.
and life as we know it would be impossible.
It's pretty crazy.
It's almost as if someone carefully calibrated the universe to make our existence possible.
Precisely, the odds of this happening purely by chance are astronomically small,
Yeah.
leading some physicists and cosmologists to propose that this fine-tuning might be evidence of a creator or some kind of guiding intelligence.
Okay, that's definitely a thought-provoking concept.
Yeah.
And then there are synchronicities, those weird coincidences that feel like
Oh, yeah.
they're more than just random chance. Like when you're thinking about someone
Yeah.
and then they call you out of the blue.
Or you stumble across the exact piece of information you need at the precise moment you need it.
Exactly.
Those kinds of experiences can feel incredibly meaningful,
Yeah.
as if some unseen force is orchestrating events behind the scenes.
I've definitely had my share of synchronicities, and I have to admit they do make you wonder.
Totally.
But how do these concepts, fine-tuning and synchronicities, connect back to
Yeah.
the idea of a manipulator shaping our reality?
Well, the blog post argues that these phenomena, while not conclusive proof, could be interpreted as hints or clues
Okay.
that something more is going on than meets the eye.
So it's like these are pieces of evidence that could support the hypothesis of a manipulator,
Right.
even though we can't definitively prove it.
Exactly. It's a bit like detective work, isn't it? We're
Yeah.
looking for patterns, anomalies, and anything that might suggest a hidden hand at work.
So even though we can't be certain about the external world,
Right.
we can look for evidence within our experience that suggests something more is going on.
That's the key insight here.
Okay,
We may not be able to say for certainty whether the external world is real,
right.
but we can examine our memories and experiences, the data we do have, and look for signs of manipulation.
It's like we're shifting from trying to prove or disprove the existence of the external world
Exact.
to analyzing the information we do have.
Yeah.
And that information includes things like fine-tuning and synchronicities.
You've got it. It's a subtle but important distinction.
Now, here's where my mind really starts to spin.
Okay.
The blog post argues that because we can potentially estimate the probability of a manipulator based on evidence within our perceived reality,
Uh-huh.
that concept becomes more objectively grounded than the belief in the external world itself.
That's a fascinating and counterintuitive conclusion, isn't it?
It is.
It challenges our everyday assumptions about what's real and what's knowable.
It really flips things on their head. We're so used to assuming that the physical world is
Right.
the most real thing there is. But what if it's not?
Yeah.
What if this manipulator, this force or intelligence behind the scenes is actually the more knowable entity?
It's a mind-bending thought experiment, for sure.
Yeah.
The blog post doesn't tell us exactly what
Right.
kind of manipulator we might be dealing with,
Right.
a super advanced AI, something else entirely.
Mm-hmm.
But it argues that we can start to piece together a picture based on the effects we observe.
So the fine-tuning of the universe, those uncanny synchronicities,
Yeah.
those become like data points, clues that hint at the existence of this manipulator.
Exactly. The author suggests we approach it like a puzzle.
Okay,
We might not have all the pieces, but we can start to see a pattern emerge.
that makes me think of those hidden pictures where you have to stare at a seemingly random collection of dots and lines
Right.
until suddenly a 3D image pops out.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we're doing here, trying to discern a hidden order within the chaos
Yeah.
of our everyday experience.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And as we gather more data, as we pay more attention to these subtle hints,
Mm-hmm.
the picture might become clearer.
This is where I have to ask the big question.
Okay.
If we accept this possibility of a manipulator, even just as a thought experiment,
Right.
does it change anything about how we live our lives?
Hmm.
Should we be trying to figure out the manipulator's motives?
Uh-huh.
Or should we just carry on as usual, assuming it's all just some grand cosmic game we can't possibly understand?
That's a question each of us has to grapple with individually, I think.
Yeah.
The blog post doesn't offer any easy answers,
Right.
but it definitely invites us to reconsider our assumptions
Okay.
about who we are and our place in the universe.
So how about you? How has this whole concept of a manipulator impacted your own thinking?
Honestly, it's made me more aware of the mystery that surrounds us.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to get caught up in the routines of daily life.
Yeah.
But when you start to consider the possibility that there's a deeper intelligence orchestrating things,
Right.
even in subtle ways, it adds a whole new layer of meaning and depth to our experiences.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah,
It makes you wonder, are we just pawns in some cosmic game?
yeah.
Or do we have a role to play in this grand design?
Those are questions that have puzzled philosophers and theologians for centuries.
Right.
The blog post doesn't offer any definitive answers,
Yeah.
but it suggests that perhaps the most important thing isn't figuring out all the answers,
Okay.
but learning to ask the right questions.
That's a great point. It reminds me of that Einstein quote.
Uh-huh.
The important thing is not to stop questioning curiosity as its own reason for existing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If we approach life with that kind of open-minded curiosity,
Right.
maybe we can start to piece together some of the answers,
Mm-hmm.
or at the very least gain a deeper appreciation for the mystery of it all.
You know, listening to you talk about this, I'm starting to think that maybe the idea of a manipulator
Mm-hmm.
isn't as scary or unsettling as it might seem at first.
Yeah.
Maybe it's actually quite liberating.
How so?
Well, if we acknowledge that there might be a larger intelligence at play,
Right.
it kind of takes the pressure off us to have all the answers
Yeah.
or to control everything in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
It allows us to surrender to the mystery, to embrace the unknown,
Right.
and to trust that there's a bigger picture unfolding,
Yeah.
even if we can't fully grasp it.
That's a beautiful way of looking at it.
Yeah,
It reminds me of that saying, let go and let God.
Right.
Maybe this idea of a manipulator is a way of inviting us to do just that.
Right.
To let go of our need for certainty and control,
Mhm.
and to trust in the wisdom of something greater than ourselves.
It also makes me think about free will.
Okay.
If there's a manipulator shaping our reality, does that mean we didn't have free will?
Yeah.
Are our choices predetermined?
That's a thorny philosophical question.
It is.
And again, there's no easy answer.
Right.
But I think it's possible to reconcile the idea of a manipulator with the concept of free will.
How so?
Well, imagine a master chess player playing against a novice.
Okay.
The master player can anticipate the novice's moves
Mm-hmm.
and steer the game in a certain direction.
Right.
But ultimately, the novice still has the choice of which move to make at each turn.
I see your point. So maybe the manipulator sets the stage, creates the context,
Mm-hmm.
but within that context, we still have the freedom to make choices.
That's one way to think about it. It's like the manipulator's playing a game on a cosmic scale. and
Right.
We're all participants in that
Yeah.
game, each with our own unique role to play.
That's a pretty profound thought. So even if our lives are part of some grand orchestrated design,
Yeah.
our choices still matter.
Absolutely. The choices we make, the actions we take,
Right.
ripple out and impact the world around us,
Yeah.
regardless of whether there's a manipulator pulling the strings or not.
Okay, this conversation has given me a whole new perspective on things.
Yeah.
I have to admit, initially, I was a bit wary of the whole manipulator idea.
Right.
It felt kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Like someone was watching over my shoulder and controlling everything.
I can understand that. It's definitely a concept that challenges our sense of autonomy and control.
But now I'm starting to see it in a more positive light.
Okay.
Maybe it's not about control, but about guidance.
Uh-huh.
Maybe this manipulator isn't some ominous puppet master,
Right.
but a benevolent force,
Yeah.
a cosmic teacher, or even a loving parent guiding us towards a higher purpose.
That's a beautiful and hopeful interpretation, and one
Yeah.
that resonates with me personally.
It's like instead of fearing the manipulator,
Mm-hmm.
we can choose to trust in its wisdom and guidance,
Right.
knowing that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. It's a shift in perspective
Yeah.
from fear to trust,
Mhm.
from control to surrender.
And maybe, just maybe, by surrendering to the mystery,
Yeah.
we can discover a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in our lives.
That's a wonderful thought to leave our listeners with.
Yeah.
This whole discussion has been a fascinating exploration of
Yeah.
the nature of reality knowledge
Right.
and the intriguing possibility of a manipulator shaping our world.
Right?
It's a topic that raises more questions than it answers.
It
But
does.
that's part of its allure, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
It invites us to keep questioning,
Right.
keep exploring, and keep our minds open to
Mhm.
the endless possibilities that the universe has to offer.
It really does make you wonder, doesn't it? If there is this manipulator, this guiding force, what does that mean for how we should live our lives? Should we try to decipher its grand plan?
Right.
Or just focus on living each day to the fullest?
That's the beauty of it. I think the blog post doesn't give us a rule book.
Right.
Instead, it throws open the doors to a whole new way of seeing the world.
Yeah.
And it's up to each of us to figure out what it means for our own lives.
I guess it's like getting a giant cosmic puzzle box
Uh-huh.
without knowing what the picture is supposed to be,
Right.
or even if all the pieces are there. But maybe the fun is in the figuring it out
Yeah.
and piecing together our own understanding.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe the manipulator, if it exists,
Right.
wants us to engage in that process of discovery. Maybe that's part of the grand design.
So instead of worrying about whether we're being controlled,
Mm-hmm.
we can choose to see it as a kind of cosmic scavenger hunt,
Yeah.
where we're encouraged to follow the clues, explore the mysteries,
Right.
and ultimately discover our own unique purpose.
That's a wonderful way to put it. It turns the whole idea of manipulation on its head.
Yeah.
Instead of being a threat to our freedom, it becomes an invitation to a deeper level
Right.
of engagement with the universe.
This whole conversation has been incredibly thought-provoking, I have to admit.
It has.
I started this deep dive feeling a little skeptical about the whole manipulator idea.
Okay.
It sounded a bit too science fiction-y for me.
I can understand that. It's definitely a concept that pushes the boundaries of conventional thinking.
But now I'm seeing it in a whole new light.
Uh-huh.
It's not about being a puppet on strings.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we might be part of something much bigger,
Mm-hmm.
something more interconnected, something more meaningful than we ever imagined.
And that can be both exciting and a little bit daunting, right?
Definitely. It's like suddenly realizing that the stage we're playing on
Yeah.
is much faster than we thought,
Right.
and the play itself might have a deeper meaning than we initially grasped.
But within that vastness, we still have our own roles to play,
Right.
our own choices to make our own stories to write.
It's like the author of this blog post is saying, hey, wake up, look around.
Mm.
There might be more going on than you realize.
Yeah.
It's a call to awareness, to curiosity,
Yeah.
to a deeper exploration of what it means to be alive in this incredible universe.
And even if we never definitively prove or disprove the existence of this manipulator,
Right.
the very act of contemplating this possibility can enrich our lives, make us more mindful, more grateful, more open to the mystery that surrounds us.
That's a beautiful takeaway. So for anyone listening who might be feeling a bit overwhelmed by all this talk of manipulation and hidden forces, remember this. You are still, you still have the power to choose, to create, to love,
Yeah.
to experience the full spectrum of human emotions and experiences.
And who knows, maybe by embracing the mystery, by following your curiosity,
Right.
you might just stumble upon some of those hidden clues,
Mm-hmm.
those synchronicities, those moments of wonder that hint at the existence of something truly extraordinary.
Well, folks, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Okay?
It's been a wild ride exploring these mind-bending concepts
Yeah.
and grappling with the big questions about the nature of reality. I hope you enjoyed the journey as much as we have.
And remember, this is just the beginning of the exploration. The conversation continues, the mystery unfolds,
Yeah.
and the adventure never ends.
So until next time, keep diving deep, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never lose that sense of wonder.